Thank you for the introduction, TOMIURA Sensei. I'm Yukiko SAITO from Waseda and RIETI. I want to give a comment to Andreas' presentation. And also, I'm actually a co-author, but I'm also a commentator, and I want to raise some discussion point. And so this is, as Andreas already explained clearly, but I briefly summarize the presentation and the contribution to the literature. And Andreas documented the new evidence of hollow FDI, and then that is a large share of transaction in host country is among Japanese affiliate. They are transacting each other, and suggesting a hollow FDI, and also creating the mirror of production network in host country. And also, the smaller farms tend to do hollow. That is also so showing the lower fixed cost to enters becomes FDI and by following. And also, so it is just a so-called fact, so summary, but we applied event study, and then we showed evidence start supplying to many will lead to the increase in the probability to become FDI and start FDI. That is an evidence, and also theoretical model is introduced to explain hollow FDI, and also several prediction on hollow FDI is confirmed. That is, customer is big M&E and also input intensive, and then so supplier tend to be the hollow and becomes a M&E. That is the fact. That's the new fact, and so summary of presentation, and also contributions to the literature. It is in the literature. In a model, so many models, so farm decision is made by explained by farm characteristics, but here we clearly observe that farm decision is not independent but dependent on the domestic partners, and also so we clearly shows mechanism, and also in the literature there are a lot of discussion about horizontal FDI, and then we can say that horizontal FDI was overestimated, and that is the contribution. And so this is a comment, and questions. And since this is a seminar at RIETI, so I more focus on the policy implication to Japan and also host countries. And then most farms, so the fact that most farms can be, more farm can be M&E, so with lower fixed cost by following. And so Andreas explained about the implication to the host country, and that is so not only the leader can have employment in host country, but the follower can due to follower, more employment effect is expected, and but less spill over in host country because so they don't have much transaction with local farm. But what is the implication to Japan? So that is there should be a substitution effect of production. So then they might lose employment in Japan, but still there is discussion about with large demand, and then that would have the positive effect to the employment in Japan, but it can be different from the leader and follower. And what would expect? What is your opinion about such effect to Japan, implication to Japan? And also, there should be a short-term effect and long-term effect, and then there's a news that Toyota gets the so supplier from local farm in Thailand, and then they might evolve the production network in host country. Then there should be some different effect from short term and long term. That would be an interesting point to discuss. And also, this is very hot topic in METI, and there might be shock of geopolitical issue and also the natural disasters. It can be a shock to host country, or it can be a shock to Japan, or relationship with host country. And then, we are now creating the middle of production network in host country. Is it good or not in terms of substitution? Or if you think about China or something, Japan might want to withdraw from the host country. Is there some effect if there is a lot of follower? That is the point. And also, maybe it might not be as good big issue, but there may be several decisions. Not only what we discussed in the theory, the decision to FDI and export or stay domestic. So in terms of following, is there anything characteristic that defines the decision, and also it can be the policy issue might be the in terms of efficiency and resilience. Maybe if you have some view on this mechanism or follow FDI and what can be expected from policy for policy support and intervention should be done. So in terms of efficiency and resilience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Saito. Professor MOXNES, would you like to respond to her comments?
Absolutely. So I kind of wish I had clear answers to all your comments and questions. Unfortunately, I don't. But I think I can give a couple of perspectives. It is true that both I guess here and also in Europe, the questions about having resilient supply chains are very much on the agenda. One thing that strikes me is that I think in this new world we're living with uncertainty about, say, tariffs and the looming trade wars every second month or so, then it seems to me that follow FDI is probably making supply chains more resilient, right? Because clearly, if you have your supply network within the same border, like if you have all your suppliers in Vietnam or Thailand or Mexico, then you're less exposed to, especially to tariffs and trade shocks. So in that sense, I think follow FDI might be a good thing in terms of reducing volatility and reducing exposure to all these international policy shocks and trade wars. So that's one perspective. I think, for the host countries, I think there are two things that are important here, right? So a lot of countries are spending money to try to attract multinational companies. And these FDI promotion policies, I think follow FDI has two potential effects, right? So the first effect is that, well, if you attract one company, say the lead firm, well, then other companies might follow. So that seems to be a good thing, right? If then the amount of FDI per dollar spent on FDI promotion will be higher. And you could also potentially create more employment in terms of multinational employment per dollar spent on FDI promotion. Now, at the same time, you have, this. So this is on the positive side, and on the negative side, I guess you have this spillover channel, right? That the spillovers to the domestic economy might be smaller because these multinationals are mainly trading within themselves. So that kind of goes in the opposite direction. And I think on net, it's not so clear if one channel is bigger than the other, or if they kind of cancel out. Here, I think my answer would simply be that you would need more research, and we would need a research project specifically on the spillover effects when there's follow FDI. And let me just briefly comment on your last question. Or one of your first questions. I think that was on the employment effects not in the foreign countries, but in Japan. And I guess it's true to some extent that, well, if follow FDI is strong, you lose more Japanese employment, like mechanically. But I think I want to challenge that. So at least in the research literature, I think the most research would find that there's like a complementarity for, like, at least on average, complementarity seems to be the story rather than substitution. Meaning that when firms become multinationals, employment in the parent country is not going down. If anything, it might actually go up. So if you believe that complementarity is more important than substitution, then I think follow FDI would simply mean that this effect would be kind of even stronger. So I don't think in general I would be too much worried about employment effects in Japan. But clearly this might depend. It might depend on the type of firms. It might depend on the type of industries and so forth. So I don't have a clear answer, but at least it's absolutely not obvious that it is kind of bad for employment in Japan, I think.
Okay, thank you, Professor MOXNES. We will now move on to the question and answer session. I'd like to choose from the audience question. Okay, one question here. Is follow FDI especially strong in the case of Japanese multinational compared with MNE in other countries? You know that the Japanese suppliers have a comparative advantage producing specialized parts and components, so that this observation is particularly prominent only for Japanese case, then that it affect your preference of your research result. How do you?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we've thought about this too. Like from a research perspective, I think we want to provide research that is not only interesting for Japan, but is relevant for all countries. And of course, if follow FDI is something that's only going on within Japan, then the relevance and so-called external validity might not be that great. So what we have done is to kind of research more the studies that is more like anecdotal in nature from the international business literature. And I think there are especially two types of case studies that have been studied. And one is, yes, true, Japanese multinationals, and in particular the vehicle assembly and the car industry. The other type of case studies that have been studied is Eastern Europe. Because when the European Union expanded eastwards and included the Eastern European countries, a lot of European car manufacturing went east. And in those cases, you saw exactly the same thing. Namely that when BMW and so forth established factories in Hungary, a lot of their suppliers also established factories in Hungary. So So this is clearly not only a Japanese phenomenon. It might be stronger in Japan than in other cases. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. But we do see this going on in other countries too, for sure.
Okay. The next question I like to take is the variation across industry. You, in your report, you compare the manufacturing firm versus the oil firm combined. What do you think about the observation in the firms in the service industry?
Yes, yeah, that's a good question. I don't think necessarily. It is of course true that I mentioned transportation costs, like physical transportation costs, as one of the reasons we see follow FDI. Clearly, that doesn't really apply to a service industry because taking a phone call or something like that is pretty cheap internationally too. But I still think there could be other types of costs that are important in services. I mentioned, for example, having face-to-face interaction with your customers and suppliers. I think that would still be highly relevant even in service industries. So I think there are many good reasons for why follow FDI could also happen outside of manufacturing. And we have done some data splits. I didn't show you this today, but we have done some data splits where we look at this follow FDI share in all different industries. And you see that this is not only occurring in manufacturing, it's occurring in many industries, including services.
Okay. I'd like to ask one question inspired by the comment by Professor SAITO. She mentioned geopolitical risk and the resilience of supply chain. But another issue triggered by our interest in geopolitical risk is reshoring or friendshoring or reorganization of global supply chain. If your research suggestion is right, then that that many multinationals will relocate overseas offshore production site back to the Japan or back to the friendly countries, then that the follow FDI smaller supplier will follow, then that the spillover effect will amplify. How do you think the possibility of your research implication in the context of reshoring?
Now that's an excellent question. I think there's I want to say two things. So I think first you're right that like follow FDI does in a sense magnify FDI flows, right? So there might be more FDI going out when there's outward FDI, but of course if firms are moving back to Japan, then also the decline in FDI will be bigger because of follow FDI. Now, but I think there's one more thing that I didn't really touch upon in our research, but I think this might be important in reality. And that is that I think some of these suppliers, they might become a multinational initially because they know they have a big Japanese customer, right? But say after a few years, they might actually start selling to other firms, right? So the first Japanese customer is like the entry, what triggers them to establish themselves abroad. But after a while, they might be getting a larger network of customers, both Japanese and non-Japanese. So in that sense, if the lead firm is going back home, then if they then have established a big network of customers, then the suppliers might not necessarily go back home. So I think that's also an important question that we haven't really looked at, whether you see like differences in like if the follow FDI share might be declining over time, for example, that it might be very high in the first few years, but then after a while it goes down because then you become more independent. as a firm.
Okay. Okay, now it's time to close the seminar. Thank you very much, Professor MOXNES and Professor SAITO. Thank you very much for your participation in our BBO seminar today.
Thank you.